Tell me your name, introduce yourself briefly, and let me know a little bit about what you do.
Yes, I am Dr. Fahamu Pecou. I'm a visual artist, scholar. My work focuses on representations of black male masculinity in all its myriad forms. So that will also encompass notions of death as well as life. Yeah, that's what.
Okay. Now, we're going to jump right in.
Okay.
In your opinion, what is death and why is death?
What is death? I think death is a return. It is, like anything, it is a kind of culmination of experiences and actions. I think that we die, like I said, because we have to return. It's just like, we have to have a beginning, we have to have an end. But even in that end, just as in that beginning, it's not, the end is cyclical, and so that ending is just the end of a cycle, end of a period or epic, and it can begin again, just like it will end, it can also begin again.
Okay. So let's talk about your beginning a little bit. I read online that both of your parents passed away when you were very young.
Well, my mother did.
Your mother did,
yes.
Okay.
So, but she died at the hands of my father.
Okay.
So I did lose both of my parents, but my father was not deceased.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for correcting that. How did the death of your mother affect you as a child?
I mean, it really was everything. My entire life, my experience, the way I move, see, experience the world is informed by that experience. I was 4 years old.
Okay.
It's my first memory. I remember vividly what happened, and there hasn't been a day of my life that I don't not only think of her, but feel her presence with me and around me.
Okay.
And I think that, it was through that experience and being able to come to an understanding of why it happened and how it happened, and allowed me to understand what it is that I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to do it. Her transition has been for me very much a really visceral sort of way for me to understand the way the world works and my purpose and my place in it. I don't know that had that not occurred that I would be the person that I am today. So for that reason, like I said, I feel like it made me who I am. Okay.
Were you present when your mother passed away? Do you remember?
I remember
everything.
Everything. We were sitting in the next room.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that. How has grief and loss impacted your creative process?
It's interesting because it's I don't think I identify with or experience grief the way that most people do. I find it to be somewhat generative.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. That in those spaces, in that space of grief, one can, I'll just speak personally for myself. In the experience that I've had with grief, particularly around my mother, I found a way to express myself and to articulate, my own presence and movement in the world. For example, when I was in college, in undergrad in college, I did a body of work that retold the story of the night that my mom died. And it was very intimate, it was very personal, it was very difficult to do because at that time I was about 21, when I started working on that I was like between the ages of like 19 and 21 years old. And as I mentioned earlier, my mom died when I was 4. So for 15 years, we never spoke about what happened. Nobody ever asked us. Nobody ever talked to us. There was no counseling. There was no kind of anything. You know. In fact, my siblings, my brother and sisters and I, we didn't even talk about it with each other. So when I began to create this work, you know, around that night, I wasn't even sure if what I remembered actually happened, or if I dreamed it, or if it was a composite of like movies and things that I'd seen, you know. And it wasn't until I actually asked my siblings to recount what they remembered that I realized that what I remembered was actually pretty accurate. And that body of work that I created from that experience ultimately allowed me to see the power of art and to see how art could become a balm for people who are dealing with grief or trauma in some kind of way, how art could allow us to feel things very deeply, even if they didn't happen to us, right? But in that feeling, it could move us and change us. And I realized then that I wanted to be the kind of artist that did that where my work wasn't just, you know, pretty pictures, it wasn't decoration, you know, like it was actually functional and it, you know, did something to kind of like move the needle. And, you know, and I think I continue to experience grief in that way. You know, I've lost friends and other family members, you know, over the course of my life, but never have those moments broken me to a place where I was not functioning. In fact, they kind of charged me up, and it was like, okay, because of you, now I'm going to, you know, yeah, so I find it generative in that way.
Okay. So why didn't your siblings talk? Why didn't you guys talk to each other about it?
I don't know why we did it. We just did it.
You didn't?
Yeah, it wasn't that like, I don't even think it was intentional necessarily, you know. I think for, you know, in large part, you know, maybe my younger sister and I, people didn't talk to us about it because we were so young, you know,
Right.
like we were 4 and 3, you know. My older brother, who was 11 at the time, he just kind of went inside. He just, you know, put it away inside his way and stepped into protecting mode, you know what I mean? So he dedicated himself to making sure that his younger siblings were okay and that nobody tried to, because people tried to separate us and, you know, adopt us off because we were orphans, you know what I mean? So people were like, well, I'll take that one, I'll take this one, I'll take these two, you know? And he fought really hard to make sure that we didn't get separated.
At 11?
At 11.
Wow.
And I think, you know, it just, you know, like life just happened, you know. And I also think that it was a different time, you know, this is the early 80s when this happened. And the concept of therapy, you know, for Black people was still a very, very far removed concept, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, oh, they'll be all right.
Right.
You know, they'll forget about it, or, you know, that kind of thing.
That was actually going to be my next question. As an adult outside of art, what form of healing have you sought? Have you sought therapy or anything else that's helped you through your grieving process?
Yeah, I mean, I did do some therapy in my mid-20s, excuse me, but it wasn't because I was seeking it out to address any kind of grief or anything like that. I actually was having issues in my marriage at the time, and my ex-wife now, and I started going to see a therapist. And it ended up, you know, one of the sessions we were talking about our childhood and past and stuff like that, and I happened to mention, you know, my mom's passing and stuff like that, and the therapist, you know, was like, tell me more about that, and you know, we started talking about that, and I realized in that moment that, man, I never really dealt with this. I never really talked to anybody about this. And, you know, despite things not working out with my ex-wife and I continued to see that therapist to talk through some of the other issues and challenges that I was having. But I think also my spiritual practice has also given me a great sense of relief and purpose. Again, I practice a spiritual practice called Ifa, which is out of Nigeria, southwest Nigeria. It's also known as Yoruba. Yeah, so that's given me language as well as understanding of like that balance between life and death.
What are your spiritual views about death? Are they the same as, it being a cycle and a return?
Yeah, most certainly. And in fact, again, like some of the language that I use when I talk about death comes directly from that understanding. And mind you, I grew up going to church every Sunday. I was there all the time, but I never really quite felt like it answered my questions. And in fact, I went to like Baptist churches and stuff like that. I remember being like 6, 7 years old and asking questions that, for things that didn't quite match up, in like Bible stories and stuff. Like, why didn't they just do, And they'd be like, don't ask any questions, you just have to have faith, you know what I mean? And that, I remember being like 6, 7, like, this doesn't feel right, But if I really felt, when I first experienced it, it was like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about a little bit about spirituality and grief and the perception of most African Americans in the United States are Christian. What have you received any backlash saying that maybe your views are blasphemous or anything like that?
No, not at all.
Not at all. Okay.
And in fact, there is the more I understand and learn about Ifa spiritual cosmology, the more things in Christian practice, in church practice, kind of make sense to me. I can point to, okay, I understand what that means when people are shouting. I understand the need of like the collective voice of singing, the dancing, you know what I mean? Like even the rhythm of the preacher, like I understand all of those things more now through the lens of Ifa. And though I don't necessarily agree with the ideologies, I think that a lot of the ideologies in Christian practice are problematic. But I do understand how Black people as a community have interpreted those, at least the rituals around Christian practice and made them their own, you know what I mean? Like when you go to a Baptist church or something like that, it's very different from going to a Pentecostal church. It's very different than going to, a non-denominational church that's populated by mostly white people. It's a very different experience. And I would argue that a lot of our Africanisms and cultural retentions that come from our spiritual practices on the continent have manifested in the ways in which we experience Christianity.
So you launched your studio back in 2017?
No, this was actually last September.
Last September, okay, thank you. What feelings of grief and emotion did that bring up?
Wow. That's really funny because it was well after the fact that I actually began to experience any real significant grief. I think, a part of my experience in life in terms of just kind of processing grief the way that I do, my whole thing is just, okay, that happened, keep it moving, right? And it's never really like taking a pause to be like, wow, let me just experience this for a moment. And so when the studio fire happened, the first time I walked into the burned out space, I was already kind of over it. It was just like, all right, it's time for something new.
You were out of the country when it happened. Okay.
Yeah. So I was just kind of like, oh, it's time for something new. And it wasn't like dismissive, like, certainly I was like sad, like, it was shocking to see the space because it didn't look anything like what I remember it being, and it was over the course of the next few months as I had to try to find a new space to work and all that kind of things that it really began to kind of set in, especially after like 3 months into it. not having a place to work, and really kind of feeling like I'm living out of a suitcase in terms of my practice. Because making art, creating for me is the way that I process things, and I wasn't able to create anything. I wasn't able to make anything. And I think I went into a really kind of like, I think I went into a depression for a little bit. It was difficult to articulate what I was experiencing because I wasn't used to those kinds of feelings. And at the same time, I knew that ultimately something better than what I had was coming.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I believe firmly that if the creator takes something away from you, it's because there's something better coming. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the way that it was like a wipeout. Like, it was like, okay, start over. And so I kind of prepared myself in my mind to start over, but the process of waiting on that start over was harder than the realization that I would have to start over.
That's so amazing listening to you say that, because it sounds exactly like what I've heard and I've experienced when someone passes away. It's like you're at the funeral, you see the body, this person doesn't look anything like what they look like in their life, but it's not until after everything is over it hits you, and it's like, I can't call them.
Right.
I can't.
Right.
That home, that love home isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it just attests to the fact that grief isn't specific to human loss or loss of life.
It's just loss.
Yeah, period.
Absence.
That's beautiful to me to hear you describe it like that, because I think so many people struggle when they lose tangible, physical, material things. They say, okay, well, it's not a person, I should get over it, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the concepts that I really endear myself to in some of the West African ideologies that I follow is this notion of grief as a ritual. That grieving itself is a ritual, and a necessary and essential ritual that helps to complete that cycle, right? So one concept that they have is this idea that when we're born, when we're in our mother's wombs, we are in water. We're born into this world, on a river, essentially.
Okay.
Like we come in on water. And when we leave, we should also leave on a river. But instead of a river of, our mother's womb, it's a river of tears from the collective grief of the community expressing their grief and expressing their emotions and sadness, or whatever it may be for us, because that becomes a part of your transition out. So, a spirit travels back to the essence on a river of tears. And so that grief is necessary. When that grief is not there, when it's absent, and that spirit can't move like it's supposed to.
Oh my God, that makes so much sense. Wow.